Today's guest is Mike Helfman, the founder behind Mikey's, one of Malaysia's most iconic pizza brands. After catching lightning in a bottle with his first outlet, Mike did what any hungry founder would do. He scaled fast. Within a year, they opened multiple locations, backed by loans and momentum. But the hype curve wasn't infinite. Cannibalization set in, margins shrank, and debt started driving the decision making. What began as expansion turned into a survival exercise. From that chaos came one of the most disciplined turnarounds in F&B, a story about diversification, discipline, and the real math behind restaurant growth. Let's dive into Mike's founder fuck up. Thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, thank you for having me. Always a pleasure. Been back. Happy to share my experience with people who want to get into the F&B industry, and hopefully they can learn something from it.
Yeah, definitely. So what kind of go back a sec? What was happening after that first Mikey's success? What did it feel like to have lightning in a bottle, and what drove the decision to then expand so quickly?
Okay, well, from the beginning, when I started the concept, at the time there were no restaurants in Malaysia that served strictly pizza. So we were the first pizzeria in Malaysia, other than a Domino's or a Pizza Hut. If you wanted pizza, you had to go to a fancy Italian restaurant, and it was part of the menu. So we were the first to introduce like a proper pizzeria and New York style pizza. Um, that being said, we had a couple of USPs. So from the very beginning, even before I opened the first restaurant, the plan was how do we open multiple restaurants and make this a
Yeah.
brand? So it was always the plan to open multiple locations. Catching lightning in a bottle was amazing. I mean, it felt like a party every single night. You know, there were lines into the street, lines out the door, people, and I'd never been in the restaurant business, so it was chaos, right? I mean, we had my chef was extremely experienced from New York. He was one of the guys who reopened Lombardi's, which was the oldest pizzeria in the United States, and then he later posthumous afterwards, after Mikey's, he went on to open his own restaurant in New York and got rated the best clam pizza in America. So
Wow.
Andrew Bellucci was, I could call him a co-founder. He was there from the very beginning, and and he was instrumental in help setting up the operations. But nevertheless, at the beginning, it was chaos, and I love it. I thrive in chaos, right?
Mm.
And it was so fun, just literally a party every night, and 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 yeah, the adrenaline that you get from when a team works cohesively in a restaurant type environment, it's almost like a sport, right? Because when things are hitting and food is coming out, it's great, but when you get into the weeds and food isn't coming out, it becomes a very stressful situation, and you're working
Yeah.
under a lot of pressure. It's one of the only businesses in the world where you actually manufacture and retail in the same location.
Yeah.
So it was fun as hell.
Yeah. It's intense business. And
Mm.
but what drove you to just let's go for the next outlet? Let's like so quickly. What
Yeah,
was
well, I mean, it was lightning in a bottle, and like I said, there was always a plan. Like when I was interviewing Andrew, the co-founder, I said one of the parts of the interview was lay me out a plan to open up 5 restaurants,
okay.
and he did that. And I mean, most restaurants don't start off this busy. I mean, from day one, we were packed. We got a really good review from KL Foodie, and it just from there on, it was like off to the races. But you know, the thing is, being new to the restaurant industry, I understand. I didn't really understand that hype lasts only for so long, right?
Mm.
And we didn't really know what we had. So we started. We went to expand in the first 6 months. We opened a second outlet and had already signed a lease agreement for a third outlet in Mid Valley Mega Mall. Um, Now, I think not knowing what you have is the best way to put it, right? Because you need to give it time to stabilize, let the hype die down, and then you see really what kind of business you have, right? I didn't do that. In effect, I kind of killed my own momentum by opening a second restaurant and spreading it out rather quickly.
Time out, guys. Uh, Lots of you are watching, lots of you are learning from the founder fuck ups that we've all gone through. But please do me one little teeny favor and subscribe, so that we can keep growing the channel and get more great founders on. Back to the episode. Yeah. So basically, you were trending, and you just like, let's capitalize on this. And I think
Yeah.
before we got into the podcast, you called it expansion at the speed of hype.
Mm.
What were the assumptions, or like, what are the assumptions or pressures that made rapid expansion seem like the right move? I know that you already had planned to, but opening a second restaurant in the 6 months and taking a third lease all at the same time, like,
Mm.
what were the assumptions or
Well,
pressures?
when you have lines out the door every single day, it's an illusion of demand, right? But our product was on the higher end, so it was most definitely catering to upper middle class Malaysians. And when we opened the second outlet, we immediately saw cannibalization
Okay.
from the first outlet. 10% from
Wow.
from day one. Like from
Wow.
day one, we saw 10% cannibalization, and we didn't realize, I guess, that it was a special occasion. It wasn't. I mean, we had a lot of regulars, but it was also a special thing to come to our restaurant. It wasn't a McDonald's. It wasn't a Mamak, right? And and in the first outlet was Bangsar, second outlet was Mankiara. So
Okay.
both affluent communities, but we realized, wow, we were getting quite a few people traveling from Mankiara to Bangsar.
Yeah.
Now we'd already signed the lease for Mega Mall, and we know Mega Mall is close to Bangsar, and it's close. It's in the vicinity of Mankiara, but we figured it was a captive audience,
Okay.
so it should be able to hold its own, and it did, and it did.
So Mid Valley held its own, but Monkiara was cannibalizing Bangsa, or
Yes.
they were all cannibalizing each other, and essentially they were just eating into each other's sales. You weren't getting net new customers. You were having the same customers. Just
Well, we were getting net new customers, but we were also expanding our operational costs,
yeah,
and the fit out to go into a mall is considerably more expensive than it is to go into a shop lot.
got it.
Like 3 times more expensive, 300% more expensive. Yeah, there's many requirements that you have to meet that you don't have to meet in a shop lot,
Yeah.
and there's large deposits that have to be paid. So yeah, so and being that we had this grand plan
Hmm.
to expand further after we opened Mid Valley Mega Mall, we also opened so we took out a loan, right? I think I told you that we took out a loan to open Mega Mall because the costs were quite high. But it wasn't just to open Mega Mall; it was also to open a fourth outlet, a fifth outlet,
Wow.
and a central kitchen. So that was an issue because the central kitchen was purely a cost center,
Yeah. And so this was
right?
all happening, this is all happening in that first year, really, because the first 6 months, first expansion, but then you've taken this loan for all this expansion as well that you're just mentioning now.
Yeah.
When you had got like, outlet two out, Monkiara, outlet three, Mega Mall, um, the gross sales, how did that start to translate into your margins and daily ops? You mentioned that it was impactful. What was happening behind the scenes financially and emotionally when you start to go, oh shit, we're
Well,
cannibalizing?
emotionally, it was a roller coaster from the beginning, dealing with my co-founder as well, because Andrew he's a chef, and he was an old school New York chef, right? So very high intensity, very emotional, and initially my plan was to kind of step back and let him run operations, but he was so emotional, and there was such a huge culture gap between him and our foreign workers from Bangladesh and Pakistan and Malaysia that I kind of had to step in and be more present and more of a bridge builder, so to say. Um, but from a financial standpoint, uh, we had more operational expenses by opening up the second outlet. It cut into our net profit from our first outlet. So we grew revenue. We grew revenue by 90%,
Okay.
gross revenue by 90% from the second outlet, but it cut into our margins and it increased our overheads. With the third outlet, that was our biggest revenue generator, but it did also cannibalize Bangsar as well. So now, after three outlets, you've got our original outlet cannibalized by 20%.
Wow.
And if you know anything about the restaurant business, once you cover all of your overheads, which are your operating expenses, which is salary, marketing, rent,
Yeah.
maintenance, um, that then it's pretty much gravy after that. It's only COGS, right, which are your cost of goods sales. And if you're operating a good restaurant, you want your cost of goods sales to be 30%, 30% or below. Um, so that cut into our net profit and and basically spread the costs across the entire company. And not only did we have three outlets at this point, we opened up a central kitchen, which is a pure cost center, and then it also included logistics because you have to buy a truck and have a truck
Yeah.
delivering to every outlet, which causes more maintenance. So things start to pile on there.
Okay. So margins are getting pretty tough. We've taken on, you mentioned you've taken on probably a significant bank loan, right? For the mall outlet with all of the
Mm.
additional costs there. What does that feel like? You're starting to see margins get ripped apart. You've taken on extra debt. Um, you know, what does that feel like? How did that kind of decision ripple across outlets 4 and 5 when you started taking on all of this debt? Did you
Well,
start?
we made a couple of strategic plays. The debt, there's no doubt that the debt puts pressure on you. It puts more
Yeah.
pressure on. You can feel it. Um, but we made a couple of strategic plays. First, we decided to diversify product, where we made a strategic partnership with KGB Burgers, and we put them into our outlet in Mid Valley.
Okay.
Okay, and then we introduced. Then we opened a fourth outlet, geographically quite far away from the other three outlets,
Okay.
so that we
You
wouldn't get
learned the
any.
lesson.
So there'd be no cannibalization, right?
Yeah.
And that outlet also kind of helps absorb the cost of the central kitchen. The more outlets you have, it kind of helps absorb the cost of the central kitchen, right? Um, then the fifth outlet that we opened up was our own outlet, and it's a completely new brand that was a burger brand, right?
Okay.
So and we dissolved our partnership with KGB, and we'd introduced burgers into ourselves, into our own outlets, and we started co-branding outlets that would be
Okay.
burgers and pizzas.
So your KGB partnership was kind of ended up being a bit of a proof of concept to do the same customers coming to buy pizza also would they want to buy burgers too, and then like you said, it diversifies your revenue.
Yeah, exactly.
And this is was this how you started to solve some of the cannibalization issues?
Yeah, it's how we started to solve cannibalization. It's how we started to, yeah, we started increasing our gross revenue that way. We introduced a new product line. We tailored the menu. We introduced some combos, and we were doing and something that we introduced early on also to help with the cannibalization was delivery. But this is before Grab. Before
Okay.
we did our own delivery, we had a WhatsApp delivery service, and so we were doing delivery from day one. Uh, Not day one, but as soon as we opened the second outlet, we started doing delivery across two outlets, and then three outlets, and then four outlets, and then five outlets. And then once Grab came on the scene, we were very early adopters on Grab,
Mm.
and that was another revenue stream for our business because at that time they weren't charging the 35% that they are
Yeah.
today.
And at what point, when you've scaled really fast before the diversification came in, was there any point where you think we're going to burn out here? We're just going to collapse under our own weight? And did you ever think like,
I mean, kind of constantly because I mean, I think that was one of the pressures of just being a business owner, and especially in the restaurant business, it's weird because you're constantly um, you're constantly buying a lot of product, right?
Yeah.
Because you have to constantly replenish
Cash.
your supplies, your food. So there's a huge churn of cash going in and out. So you don't really know where you stand in terms of cash. It's difficult to determine that because you're constantly you're on credit line, you're on credit terms with suppliers, and you're buying. But we knew we were doing something right when our suppliers were approaching us and asking us to try and open new outlets or expand to them with them in new countries because we constantly paid our bills on time.
It's unheard
And
of.
what's that? Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that was that was a good feeling. That was good to know that we were doing better than most. You know, those little wins kind of help you get through these constant hurdles. And in the F&B industry, there's constant problems, right? And when you're at 5 restaurants, it's it's a really difficult space because you're too small for private equity and you're too small to have like a big corporate office that can really handle and have this corporate infrastructure, but you're too big to
Not every time.
but you're too big to be able to manage everything yourself. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's this conundrum of okay, do I start having a marketing team and GMs and in-house accountants, and or do I try and do everything automated myself? And that becomes another cost center in itself. So you're in this area that if you can't get out of that area, you're fucked,
Okay.
basically. Because you need to either grow and raise funds so that your business has enough money to be able to have a proper corporate infrastructure, or you need to really pare down.
Yeah.
So I kind of hybridized that situation. And what we did was we decided to get rid of the central kitchen and just really make our ordering more efficient, right? We took the guy who was in charge of all of our purchasing and we put him into our main restaurant and he did the purchasing, and all of the restaurants would call into him what their inventories were, and he
Mm.
would do individualized purchasing for each restaurant according to what their inventories were. So
Okay.
that guy, and we had our workers just do the prep. So that got rid of that cost center. And then what I did was I created a very lean corporate office with a marketing person,
Mm.
a GM, and 2 in-house accountants to manage the 5 restaurants, plus the delivery, plus the 2 different brands.
Okay.
Um, and that seemed to work. And that seemed to work. And then what happened was COVID hit.
Mm.
And for us, COVID was a blessing because we were way ahead of the game.
You're a
We had
company.
been delivering from day one, right?
Yeah.
So people knew that we were a solid delivery option. So we saw our sales increase dramatically at the beginning while everybody else was playing catch up.
Did you?
Well, what we also saw though, because this was a time to reevaluate,
Mm.
right? We also saw that there was a lot of bloat in the company and that we could
Mm.
manage without so many people. So we did severance packages, and we ended up cutting about 15% of the company
Okay.
in terms of employees. But we saw we I mean, it was a downsizing exercise where we started seeing more profit from that.
Yeah.
And since we were ahead of the game, we started getting inquiries for licensing our product into mobile and virtual kitchens,
Okay.
and which we eventually did partner with somebody, a company called F&B Ventures,
Okay.
and they licensed 10 outlets for each of our brands. So 10 outlets for Mikey's New York Pizza and 10 outlets for NY Burger Co. And those were virtual mobile kitchens. At that point, we what we did was we turned our largest restaurant into a central kitchen itself. So
Oh.
rather than having a separate space for a central kitchen, we we put the central kitchen in the restaurant. We took some seating space out. We added
Okay.
more refrigeration. We added more storage space so that we could accommodate these other outlets.
Mm.
And we charged for that. So all of a sudden, our central kitchen, which was in one of our restaurants, became a profit center.
So actually, if you think about it, although it was a mistake at the time in scaling super quickly and you're like at a nice edge the whole time, that level of expansion saved you for COVID because you diversified well, you had built your trust of delivery and you became like a trusted partner. You've built great relationships with your vendors. Because a lot of restaurants struggled, right, in COVID,
Yeah.
because you lose all your footfall. And whereas you actually grew in COVID,
Right. Yeah, we
unheard of.
did. We did. We grew the delivery business. I mean, we did. Nevertheless, we did have to cut down on staff because there was no in-house dining, right?
Yeah.
So obviously, that was the side of the company that we had to cut. We had to cut out, but we did give them generous severance packages, and that was it. We had to make a list. We made a list with A employees, B employees, C employees, and that's how we went about it.
I imagine that had a mental toll, kind of having to do that, especially 15% of the workforce.
Yeah, and our workforce at the time was about 60 employees.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah, because you're responsible for these guys, and a lot of people who work for us. I mean, we were able to watch them grow as
Yeah.
our company grew. They would show us homes that they had bought back in Bangladesh and
Mm.
investments that they had made, and there was pride in that. Um, but but yes, we did expand during COVID, but I would say it was still a very stressful time, obviously, but also lucrative for us because we ended up selling the business to these partners that we had made from licensing the business to
Yeah.
the delivery game. Quite
Yeah.
quickly after COVID, when it seemed that mobile and virtual kitchens were going to be all the rage, but they've since now fizzled out.
So your founder fuck up is very much a success story. And if you were like for F&B founders who are thinking about getting in, people who are either thinking about or are in there now, like trying to chase that early hype or have
Yeah.
caught a little bit of lightning in a bottle, thinking about expanding rapidly. What's your core advice before
I
they sign
wouldn't,
that next
yeah,
leap or take the next loan, you know?
yeah, I wouldn't have. I mean, it was a lot of pressure. We were working under a lot of pressure. I think it would have been a lot easier on myself and my co-founder if we had just waited a bit longer. Be more
Mm.
patient would be my advice. See what you have. Let the momentum ride out so that you see how it ends up when you stabilize.
Yeah.
Do you still have a net profit business? Pay your investors back as quickly as possible. Like for us, that was another pressure that I had. Like I didn't pay my investors back until we exited.
Yeah.
And luckily I had great investors. They never asked. They didn't put pressure on us for payments. But I mean, I'd made some incremental payments as we had successes.
Mm.
But had I not expanded fast, I could have paid my investors back probably in the first year.
Mm.
Maybe less than a year. But instead, I opted to open two restaurants and take out a loan. So it
Yeah.
was a very risky move on my part, and frankly, I think it was a beginner's move. Like if I did that, if I wanted to start another brand again, I wouldn't do that. I would wait and see, and because believe it or not, you could take out a ton of profit out of one restaurant if it's run correctly. Because once you, like I said, once you hit your overheads, it's gravy from there.
Yeah.
So if we were able to maintain uh, that one restaurant instead of the three restaurants with a loan, because then you're making loan payments as well,
Hmm.
right? It's not like free money. You still have to make a monthly loan payment on top of the rental and all the other overhead
Yeah.
expenditures that you have. So I would say see how profitable that one restaurant is, and then if that restaurant is profitable enough to be able to save to open
Mm.
a second restaurant with the profits, then do that, and it'll become exponential over time. The net profit will compound, and you'll be able to expand faster and more sustainable. So
Mm.
that would be my recommendation.
Because the just from today's story, with the level of detail, or detail, but the things that you had to do tactically just to make ends meet, during that expansion period, right? You had to start doing burgers, create all these partnerships, figure out a different way of doing centralized kitchens, figure out a different way to have your corporate structure, basically 0 to 1 all across the board. And it sounds like you and your co-founder put a lot of effort into the operations, which is why you made it out the other side. So I'm definitely not going to say that there's an element of luck. Obviously, the luck part was the lightning in the bottle at the beginning, but not from the mistakes.
It was luck. It was luck, but it was also calculated. I mean, we entered
Mm.
the business because we knew that there was no, we would be a USP
Yeah.
in ourselves. There was no pizza businesses at the time, and what we saw was, at that time, it was the very beginning of like fast casual burgers, right? So you were getting the Shake Shacks of the world in
Yeah.
America, and in Malaysia you were getting Burger Lab and KGB. So I said, this can translate over to pizza, right?
Mm.
So it was a calculated decision to choose the product itself.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's a great lesson. And what are you doing? What are you doing now? If somebody wanted to work with you or hear from you, what
Yeah.
would you want to offer?
So all right. So now I've been so I took funding from Mikey's, and I've pivoted back to my. I mean, I kind of fell into F&B. We didn't realize it was going to be as successful as it was. So my background traditionally is media and consulting and entertainment, and now we've been producing movies. We produced a couple of movies, but that industry is the film industry is in a decline over the last since COVID, really, because of the attention spans of people getting shorter. You've got shorts on the internet, social media feeds are really taking over people's attention. So we are pivoting to a startup technology company, a social
Mm-hmm.
media company that
Yeah.
harnesses and tries to fix some of the mistakes by these previous technology companies, by I like to call social media 2.0. We are going to be AI native social media 3.0, where we can harness the polarization that has been created by these echo chambers and allow people to have open and free dialogue in a structured debate setting. So we want to gamify debate. Name of the app is Convo. You can sign up for it on convo.earth. That is there's a wait list. We've got a team that's building right now. We're hoping to launch by end of first quarter 2026. That's going to be a gamified social debating app to try and stem some of this polarization and stem some of the misinformation that's being created by AI. We
Mm.
have a built-in LLM into our social platform that'll be fact checking, and not only that, it's going to give power back to the user. So don't be a slave to the algorithm. Control the algorithm.
Mm.
We're gonna have our own algorithm, of course, but the members of our community will be able to manipulate their algorithm how they see fit. Do they only
Mm.
want to see videos? Do they only want to see um, no shorts for 30 minutes? Do they want to see only news from their friends? Do they want to look up posts only on AI? They'll be able to do that all from just typing into the LLM bar, the anything bar in our social media app, convo.earth.
Wow, hell of a project. And from the success you ended up having from Mikey's and turning that fuck up around, I'm sure that Convo's going to do great. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure to see you. Hope to see you soon.
Second time on mine, I'll have to do another one on yours soon.
Indeed, indeed.
All
Take
right.
care.